What is going on, guys? Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GoingFor2.com NFL Sports Betting Show. We're almost there. It's almost preseason football time, and here on the podcast we have broke down 24 of the 32 teams in the National Football League, so we're going to wrap it up today, talk about the last 8 teams in the AFC, going AFC West and AFC East for this podcast. So with me today, Matt Daniels is back to help me break down these teams. Matt, how are we doing tonight?
Doing fantastic, man. Excited to be back on.
So preseason football, just a couple weeks away. I think there's 6 or 7 more Sundays till actual football games that matter will be back. So really excited for sure. So as always, we have a lot to cover here. So yeah, let's jump right in. AFC West is where we're starting. Of course, we're going worst to first in the divisions. Last year for the Broncos, 5-11 season. Vegas's 2017 guess coming into the year, way off. 8.5 wins is what they thought. 5 wins, terrible. They started off 2-0. Then they lost 8 straight games after that. They had just one of the worst QB carousel in the league of, man, if you're a Broncos fan and you had to watch the three-headed monster of Brock Osweiler, Trevor Siemian, and Paxton Lynch all season, like, I feel for you, man. That was a terrible carousel of QBs that they used last year. Really bad. And, of course, that held them back because their defense, again, was a top 10 defense, but they just really struggled on the offensive side of the ball. So, a pretty big offseason for the Broncos. Of course, the 4th overall pick, Bradley Chubb, fell to them. 5th overall pick, sorry. They gave Case Keenum $20 million, so we'll see how that goes. They also added everybody's favorite punter, Marquette King, so that was a nice move. He's hopping the border from Oakland to the Broncos. Then their big loss in the year was Aqib Talib is no longer with them. He is on the Rams. But, Matt, looking at this team, okay, they gave Case Keenum $20 million, and he's their QB for the foreseeable future, I guess. As a Vikings fan, I'm still like 50-50 on the, like, was Case Keenum, was that a fluke last year, or like Pat Shurmur's play calling, offensive coordinator? Was it his doing that made Case Keenum so good? Like, where do you stand on that? Do you think it was a smart move to give Case Keenum $20 million? And that sounds like a loaded question, but, like, it's not. Like, do you think that he's actually a franchise guy? Did he really turn it around, or was that just a fluke last year?
I don't really want to jump into conclusions right now. I don't want to just say, oh, yeah, it was definitely a fluke, or, like, this is the evolution of Case Keenum. But I do think that this is a very similar role, or a similar team that he had in Minnesota, a really good defense with a lot of good offensive weapons around him, and a relatively good offensive line as well. So I think that it really just depends on his relationship with the offensive coordinator coming into this season, and how quickly they can get to work and get gelling with the entire team, get a good chemistry going. The thing with Case Keenum in Denver, I could see like a really high ceiling and also like a really low floor. Like, it could be what he was like with the Rams, but then at the same time, it could be a repeat of Minnesota. So it's hard to say. I don't think that. I think this year is really going to define who Case Keenum really is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the team around him, like, I don't really know what to think about the team around him either. Like, you got Devontae Booker at running back, an older receiving core in Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, an offensive line that's sort of meh. I don't know. It's going to be a weird year. And on our NFC podcast, Tim and I think we decided that the Lions are the most boring team in the NFC. I think the Broncos are like the most boring team in the AFC, possibly even more boring than the Lions. I think the Broncos, like, if I had to choose a team on Madden, they'd be like the last team that I would choose would be Denver. I don't know. I just don't know what to think of this team. Like, where are they going? Because They have a very good defense, but I'm pretty surprised that they didn't draft a quarterback. What are your thoughts on that? They had Josh Allen and Josh Rosen on the board still and decided to go with Chubb. Like, what are your thoughts on that? I was a little surprised that they didn't go for a QB. I mean, Paxton Lynch is a bust. Brock Osweiler is not a starting quarterback. Like, I don't know what they did. They get Case Keenum. Like, that's like sort of a bridge. I don't really know. What do you think? Would you have liked to see them get a quarterback?
I think that them drafting Bradley Chubb is just more speaking to their confidence in Case Keenum. If they really wanted to do because really the draft would have defined what they were going to do. So the fact that they went with the defensive player, that means in my eyes that they're continuing to try and go for a championship.
Yeah, I agree.
So if they went quarterback, then I think that would be them saying they're accepting a full rebuild, and that it's going to take them time to get them back to where they want to be. But I think that they were able to draft basically a younger version of Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders with Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton, and then on the other side of the field, like how you said, they brought in Bradley Chubb to continuously bring in more pressure. They really didn't address the loss of Aqib Talib, but I think that they're just going to ride with bringing more pressure is going to improve the quality of the secondary. So, I think this more just speaks to the fact that they are still trying to chase the championship rather than accepting the rebuild.
Again, on our last pod, and we're going to do it here later in the show, but we gave our NFC locks for the playoffs and locked outs. I don't have a single team locked out in the AFC. Out of all 16 teams, I legitimately could see any single team making the playoffs. I could see, I mean, if we're going by divisions, like we said last podcast, the AFC South, I could see the Colts, Titans, Watson and the Texans, Blake Bortles and the Jags. I could see any of those teams finding a way in a wild card, and of course one is going to win the division. Even in this division, I mean, Broncos, Raiders, Mahomes with the Chiefs, and then, of course, we have the Chargers in the AFC West ending it, and most people think that they will win the division, but I don't have a single team locked out. Like, I could see Denver making a wild card push. Maybe Case Keenum is a really good quarterback, and their defense is really good. So, I don't know. I really don't know what to think of this team. I really don't want to watch this team play either. Like, oh man, they're just so uninteresting. I don't know, man. We'll see. There are just so many more interesting teams like Mahomes and the Chiefs, and then the Chargers are going to be really good. Of course, all the AFC South, like, they will not be on my Red Zone channel for sure. But I think this team's going to be okay. I think if we're going to jump right into the guess, my Vegas guess would be 7 wins, a 7-9 season for Denver. Where do you see them? What's your Vegas guess?
My guess, I could see them doing 9-7. I think Case Keenum will be a competent quarterback, but I actually went with 7 wins for Vegas as an over/under.
The actual Vegas over/under, you and I say 7. It is 7 exactly. You and I, nice start. Right on the money there. Yeah, 7-9, that sounds realistic. I could see 8-8. 9-7 would be pushing it. I just don't know what to see. Again, a bunch of new players on this team, a bunch of new guys. Like, you never know how they mesh right away. Case Keenum having to get chemistry with new receivers, learning a whole new offense. Like, you never know. So, a conservative 7 is my guess, but we'll see. So coming in at 3rd in the AFC West, the Oakland, soon-to-be Vegas Raiders. Last year, 6-10 year for the Raiders. Vegas could not have been more wrong on their over-under of 10 wins, which is really, really high. So, like Vegas said, and like everybody in the football fan community really was basically locking the Raiders in last year as a playoff team. Like, oh, they won 11 games, like, let's run it back. Like, the AFC is so weak, like, they're definitely definitely a playoff contender this year. They're going to be a lock for the playoffs, and they went 6-10. I mean, everybody pegged them as this easy playoff team, and it just did not happen last year. A lot of injuries for them, but a big offseason for them to the soon-be Vegas Raiders. No bigger than John Gruden signing a 10-year, $100 million contract, the biggest in NFL history. What do you think about that deal? What do you think about Gruden? Like, what's going to happen next year, man? I have no idea, dude. Like, oh, man. Gruden's your coach. Derek Carr's your quarterback. Like, are you okay with the Gruden signing? What do you think about that?
Initially, yes. I was excited to see John Gruden come out of ESPN and actually be a coach again. I was excited about that initially.
Me too.
And then the draft. And then all the free agency signings happened. So now my confidence is basically shot. I'm very confused with what he's trying to do here. I think he's maybe just trying to do a quick culture shock right now, getting guys that he knows, like, thinks like him, and then, like, building a team mentality now and then building from there. But he's signed guys that are, like, 29 and older all over the place. I mean, I am, like 4 or 5 years ago, if they had all these guys, like, oh, man, Oakland's going to be an awesome team. They signed Doug Martin, Jordy Nelson, Martavius Bryant, Derek Johnson. Like, all of these guys are, like, 29 or older. I'm not really sure what they're trying to do. And then the whole Colton Miller draft pick, I'm in the mindset that they're going to have a very bad season. But, I mean, they're not playing very good talent as far as, like, the divisions that the AFC West is playing. They're playing the NFC West and the AFC North. And I try to think about the teams that are in that division. And the three best teams that come to mind are the Rams, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. And I guess this is kind of a hot take, but I'm putting Seattle as kind of a bad team just only because of the fact of what we talked about last time, where they're just kind of like on a they're really stepping into a rebuilding phase after all the losses they had to their defense this past offseason, you know?
Yeah, no, Seattle's definitely rebuilding. I don't think they'd even deny that. I mean, if Earl Thomas is gone, I don't even know what we're going to see on that side of the ball. But going through all 32 teams, I'm pretty good at, like, again, these Vegas guesses, and I think I'm pretty good at projecting what these teams will actually go. Out of all 32 teams in the NFL, the Raiders are the hardest team for me to figure out what we're going to see from them next year. I legitimately have no idea. John Gruden hasn't been a coach for the last, 15 years.
10 years, yeah.
10 years, yeah. And so, again, their team, like you said, strange free agent signings. Doug Martin, I don't know why you needed to bring Doug Martin in. He most likely has a drug problem, and he's old. I don't know what that was up with that. Jordy Nelson is a shell of his former self. He didn't even have 500 yards receiving last year. I don't know. However, a couple moves I did like. I mean, Martavius Bryant there, I really like that move. I think if he can just figure it out, I think him and Derek Carr could have an interesting connection. One thing before we take the guess here, can we talk about how bad Amari Cooper was last year? He had one good game against the Chiefs where he had a couple touchdowns. Every single week, he was just terrible. What? Now you're sort of looking at, okay, our star receiver may not be good. What do you think we're going to see from Amari? Was that a fluke year last year? He was so bad last year.
I mean, you would think he'd have to, that had to have been just a complete fluke because these drops were not apparent in his college tape it really started in the NFL. I don't know. I think John Gruden is definitely relying his success on Amari Cooper. He's already come out and said that Amari Cooper is going to be the focal point of their passing game. And to kind of further talk about John Gruden, the fact that he hasn't coached in 10 years might actually be an advantage for him because no one really knows what his game plan is going to be. I mean, back last time he coached, he was probably running the
Yeah.
30,
Interesting.
30, 40 times a game. But to answer your question about Amari Cooper, I am definitely in the side that it's probably more of a fluke, and we're bound to see a better Amari Cooper this year.
Talking about their defense, they were one of the worst in the league. I think they were in the top 5 worst in DVOA, which is what I always look at for defensive metrics. Terrible defense, didn't really address it in the draft or the offseason. I don't know. I again, Gruden's your coach. They were really good 2 years ago. They were really bad last year, and now they have a new coach. I don't know what to think of these guys. So I just sort of I sort of went in between 16-0 and 0-16. I just went 8 wins is my biggest guess. I honestly don't know if they're going to be good or bad. So I went 8 wins for the Raiders this year. What do you think Vegas thinks?
I went with 5.5.
5 point, man, that's not your personal guess, huh? You really think that Vegas thought 5.5?
Yeah.
I guess they did win 6 games last year. I mean, but again, I think they had a great year 2 years ago. They won 11 games. Derek Carr was an MVP favorite. Of course, got hurt before the playoffs. So again, but last year that was bad, and I think we're just going in the middle. I've got them at 8 wins. You say 5.5. The actual Vegas over/under is 8 wins. Actually, Vegas again doesn't really know what to think of them either. I think they just slapped 8 wins on there and hoping they get money on both sides. So 8 wins is what Vegas says. I'm 2-0 so far, but I don't know. I again, so hard to figure out what we're gonna see from them next year. That's why we watch the game. We never know what's gonna happen. So coming in at second in the AFC West, the Kansas City Chiefs. So last year, weeks 1 through 5, they were the best team in football, 5-0. Alex Smith's the MVP favorite in Vegas, and then they just blew it in the middle there, and then of course they sort of regained consciousness and ended the season well and made the playoffs. They ended 10-6. Vegas's guess for them coming into the year was 9 wins, so they went over there. So yeah, this is a very, very interesting team here coming into 2018. New quarterback for them, Alex Smith, of course, playing in Washington now. So the Patrick Mahomes era in Kansas City has started. So Mahomes is there. We saw 1 game from him last year against the Broncos. I watched that game actually because, again, I think Mahomes is one of the biggest X Factor guys in the league. Very curious to see how he plays. But in that game I watched it. I was like, again, it was a Week 17 game against a Broncos team who didn't really care and a Kansas City team who didn't really care. But, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I think, wanted to show out. I wasn't impressed with what I saw from him in that one game. And, again, it's so hard to project how quarterbacks will do from college to the NFL. But what do you think about Mahomes? Are you high on Mahomes, or do you think he's just going to be meh, okay? What are your thoughts on him?
I am high on Mahomes because I believe in his talent. I believe in Andy Reid, and I believe in the offensive weapons that they put around him. I mean, it's just because of the situation that he's in is why I have such high confidence in him.
For sure.
If he was on any other team, I wouldn't be as high. I would definitely have the worries that you just stated, just because he came from an air raid system and then came into the NFL, and generally those type of quarterbacks don't have very much success. But Andy Reid is probably one of the better coaches as far as developing talent, and I think that Patrick Mahomes is definitely that year of not playing probably worked in his favor, and they brought in Sammy Watkins, and I think that they're in a really, really good position to be pretty explosive on offense.
Yeah, for sure. I like the points you made. Andy Reid does know how to develop quarterbacks for sure. but they're in like a weird position where they have a good team around them. Like that offense could be really potent. Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey's still there, and then Kareem Hunt. Like that's an awesome offense for the next 3+ years. And it's a playoff caliber team as we saw last year, but like they have basically a rookie QB. And so like what is going to happen there? He's going to have some growing pains. Again, I wasn't really that impressed with what I saw in that one week 17 game from him last year. So I'm definitely interested to see this Chiefs team. I think if Mahomes is actually good, we're talking about a very, very good team for years to come. So I'm interested to see how he plays. They're definitely one of my go-to red zone teams because I love he can use his legs. He has a gun for an arm. His dad actually was actually a pitcher for my Minnesota Twins. So yeah, I'm curious to see what we see from him, man. I think he's up there with Trubisky as like one of the, if he is good and everything breaks right with him, they're gonna be really good. Like it's just how they were. I mean, they were a 10-6 team last year. And if he's the real deal, man, they traded up a first-round pick for him, then...
No. We'll find out who Patrick Mahomes is in the first 6 weeks. They're playing at the Chargers, at Pittsburgh. They're playing at home against San Francisco, at Denver, at home against Jacksonville, and then in Foxborough.
Damn, that is a tough 6 weeks. Oh, my goodness.
Rough stretch.
Yeah, definitely, man. That's got to be like the worst first 6 weeks of the season of any team. Yeah, I'm just interested to see this team all play together. But just like the explosiveness of that offense, man. So many pieces there that I love, and their offensive line is still pretty good too. I don't really have any other thoughts on this team. It lives and dies with Mahomes this year. Like if he's good, they're gonna be really good. If he's bad, they might have a really high draft pick this year, and schedule very tough, very, very tough. So, all that considered, they were a playoff team last year. Mahomes is projected to be a really good quarterback. Everybody has hyped him up this year. All the analysts and everything are saying he's going to be the next big thing in the NFL. So, my Vegas guess is 8.5 wins. What do you think the Chiefs go for Vegas?
Vegas, I said 9.5.
9.5 wins. The actual Vegas over-under is 8.5 wins. I am 3-0 so far. 8.5 is what Vegas says. Yeah, I that's like a no bet for me. I don't know what we're gonna see from Mahomes, and I mean, again, their schedule is so tough. I may even go under there because, like you said, the first 6 weeks are so tough. Playing at Foxborough, Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, at San Fran. That's a really tough schedule. So we're going to see, man. We're going to see what Mahomes has got. But I don't know. I just really love the offense around him. And if he's good, that team's just going to soar for sure. So coming in at first in the AFC West, I almost said San Diego. The Los Angeles Chargers. Last year, 9-7 year for them. Vegas's guess coming into the year was 7.5, so they went over there. Like we said in our last podcast, they got snubbed. They just got snubbed by the way the playoff system runs, and that they were left out because the playoffs would have been way more interesting with them and the Ravens, but instead we got the shitty ass Bills and the Titans last year. So, not very interesting playoffs in the AFC last year. But, yeah, the Chargers look to be a team on the rise, so let's talk a little bit about their offseason. So, my favorite pick in the draft, of course, was Josh Rosen of the Cardinals. I think that was just by far and away the fact that the Cardinals could turn the 15th pick into Josh Rosen was just amazing, and they should be really proud of themselves, and you got to be pumped if you're a Cardinals fan. But my second favorite pick in the draft was probably the Chargers getting Derwin James at 17. I just thought he was a top 10 talent, and he was just like the missing puzzle piece in that defense. Like, he's going to be a day one starter. I thought that was a great pick for him to fall into their laps at 17. What do you think about Derwin James? I know you're a big draft guy. Do you think he can make an impact right away for this team?
Oh, evaluation that he was going to be a top 10 guy. And what's really awesome to see is that even after he got drafted in the first round, it seems like every other week I pull up Twitter and I see a video of Derwin James working out. Like, wherever he's at. I mean, dude's putting in work during the offseason. Like, even though he got drafted, he made it in the NFL, he's still trying to be the best he possibly can. And it's those type of guys that make a true difference their first year. And you're right, he's a perfect fit for this defense. And I was just sad that the Cowboys didn't try and trade up ahead of the Chargers to pick him. But, hey,
what are you going to do?
He's a Charger. But yeah, I'm excited to see what he can be.
For sure. I mean, looking at this team's roster all around, we're just going to go through the depth chart a little bit. Phillip Rivers, Melvin Gordon, Mike Williams is back this year. Huge loss of Hunter Henry to that ACL tear. Terrible loss and terrible start to the offseason for them, but I mean, maybe they'll get Antonio Gates back or something. But then, of course, you have Keenan Allen, and then a very good offensive line. And then their defense, Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, add in Derwin James here, Casey Hayward. This roster is like a top 5 most complete roster altogether. Like, this is a very, very solid team. And, of course, they're projected to win the AFC West. So, what do you think about them as Super Bowl contenders this year? I think for me they're an easy playoff. I wouldn't say lock, but they're going to win this division. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. Do you think that they could possibly be playing in the AFC Championship game maybe?
AFC is just so stacked, like with top end teams. I honestly have no idea who's going to come out of the AFC. But the Chargers are definitely in the contention there. As long as they don't get plagued with injuries as they have in the past, I think that they are definitely a team that could make the Super Bowl. But I mean, as far as like a lock, I have no idea. There's so many different teams that could make the play or the Super Bowl. It is hard to predict who's going to come out of the AFC.
The one thing that I'm worried about with this team is Phillip Rivers is 36 years old, and we saw it last year and years prior with Peyton Manning in his last season, and then Carson Palmer last year is like that. Like when they're getting up in their late 30s, they're like the arm strength goes down, and like those balls are so easily picked. And like you saw it so much with Palmer last year. It's like the zip on the ball is just gone, and it's so easy for D-backs to get in front of those passes. So like that would really suck if like this team so complete, everything's there. Like I think they definitely have Super Bowl aspirations this year, and then if Phillip Rivers regresses and turns into like an old man quarterback, like that's the worst thing that could happen to them, because Phillip Rivers is one of those quarterbacks who I always thought deserved a Super Bowl ring, but he just happened to play in a conference with Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning for his whole career. So that would be really, really shitty for them if that just ended up happening, that Phillip Rivers just regressed so much with the age. And so yeah, that's the one thing that could hold this team back. But the Chargers the last several years have like had a really complete roster. Like people have been really excited about them. And then like even last year, they started off 0-4 last year, and they still went 9-7. They went 9-3 to end the year. But like this team just continues to shoot themselves in the foot. They can't win close games. They have to deal with a bunch of injuries. So everybody hypes the Chargers up every year, and then you never know. So my Vegas guess was 9 again. I think a conservative 9 wins for them to win this division. What do you think Vegas thinks for the Los Angeles Chargers?
I'm going with the 9.5.
9.5. The actual Vegas guess is 9.5 wins. Good guess, Mr. Daniels. Very nice guess. 9.5 there. So we've nailed, you or I have nailed it on the head every single time. Nice work so far for the AFC West. It's this whole division though, man. It's gonna be really interesting. I honestly have no idea what we're gonna see because I could see the Broncos shutting some teams down on offense. I could see, like I said, maybe Mahomes struggles his rookie year, and well, I mean technically not his rookie year, but you know what I mean. And then, I mean, if the Chargers deal with injuries, if Philip Rivers is bad, and like maybe Derek Carr and the Raiders just tear it up, who knows? Like this division is very, I don't know what to think of this division really. I bank on the Chargers winning it, but I could see the Chiefs sneaking in. I could even see the Broncos. Case Keenum, maybe he's the real deal after all. Like, who knows what we're going to see from this division. But do you have the Chargers winning this division?
I do.
Yeah.
I actually have them as the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Damn, and you thought, I asked you if they were going to make the AFC Championship game. You said maybe, and you think they're the number 1 seed in the AFC. Damn. Wow, that's...
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are the number 1 seed, but there's just so many high-end teams at that point that it's going to be difficult to see how it all turns out. That was my only... I didn't want to just say, oh, yeah, they're for sure Super Bowl teams, like, just because I know that Jacksonville, New England, and Pittsburgh are definitely going to be in the contention there as well. But, yeah, I think the only team, as far as, like, betting odds, I would bet the under on Oakland, but the other ones I would probably stay away from.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus in Vegas, too, is that we're going under there, because, I don't know, Gruden hasn't been in the league in 10 years, so who knows, man, who knows. But, you know, to your point earlier, you say the AFC is stacked. Like, I've been preaching on our last podcasts. The NFC is just really, really stacked. Like, there's going to be a team like the Falcons or the Panthers or the Niners or Seattle is going to be left. Like, there are going to be like 3 or 4 teams like that who are going to be left out because there are only 6 spots. But, like, the AFC is wide open. Like, the Patriots are like a lock, but heck, the Steelers may regress this year with the in-house fighting. Like, the Chargers, maybe somebody gets it. Like, who knows what's going to happen with the AFC? It's going to be a really interesting division in that sense, is that a team like the Titans may run away with it, or the Texans might be really good. So, like, there's a lot of wide open space for a team to make a push here in the playoffs. So, of course, you have those top tier teams like the Patriots and the Steelers, but overall, the conference is just really anybody can make the playoffs, really. So, you never know, man. You never know. All right, hopping into the AFC East, I think consensus, this is the worst division in football. You have the Dolphins, Bills, and Jets. Of course, the juggernaut Patriots will come out on top as usual, but man, this division is terrible, terrible, terrible. Many rookie quarterbacks in the division, many teams who might not be good for a while. So let's hop in at 4th place with the New York Jets. Last year, the Jets 5-11 for New York. Vegas's guess was 4.5 wins. Vegas made a shit ton of money on that 4.5 because coming into the year, some people thought that this team, including myself, would not win a single football game. I legitimately thought the Jets would go 0-16. And many teams would consider a 5-11 year to be a bad season. But this was actually like an excellent season for them considering what they were projected coming into the year. When you heard reports of like Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg as the quarterback competition, I was like, oh my god, this team's winning negative games this year. But Vegas 4.5.
Josh McCown.
Yep, Josh McCown saved the year. 4.5 wins was Vegas's guess. Everybody went under on that. I believe it was at minus 260. So coming in, everybody was just betting the under. If you hit the over on that, which is what it ended up, like, good for you, man. But 4.5 was way too high. I thought they'd win 1 game, maybe 0, but they actually snuck in 5 games. They were really competitive against teams like the Saints and the Patriots. Like, they had a pretty good year last year. So let's talk a little bit about their offseason. Big offseason for the Jets. They added Teddy Bridgewater, drafted Sam Darnold, of course. Love that pick. The fact that he fell to them when most people projected him as the first overall pick, if you're a Jets fan, you got to be ecstatic about that. They added Terrell Pryor too, Isaiah Crowell at running back, Jermaine Johnson from the Rams at cornerback. Like, looking at their depth chart coming into this pod, like, there's some things to be excited about here if you're a Jets fan. I really like this team overall. So, the thing about this team is, I don't know what's going to happen, and I have the same question for you for our next team here in this division. You got Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, and Josh McCown, all three quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater has a loophole in his contract where he can get cut before the season starts, and they only have to pay him $500K. So he may not be there, but Sam Darnold, of course, quarterback of the future, and then Josh McCown is, I guess, the bridge guy. Who is going to start week one for them? Who do you think will take the reins for the Jets at quarterback week one for them next year?
Definitely Josh McCown.
You think so? Josh McCown's going to be their starter?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think that they're going to see what they have in Teddy Bridgewater if Josh McCown doesn't, like, if they feel like at any point during the season that their season is lost, they're going to go to Teddy Bridgewater first, then Sam Darnold. I think that they want to really develop Sam Darnold throughout the whole entire season rather than push him in too early, mainly because this team, like, let's just face it, I mean, the New York Jets aren't going to be competitive this year, so there's really no point in putting in their rookie way too early and messing up his development process and messing with his confidence. But if they put in Teddy Bridgewater and see that he's actually a competent quarterback and he's playing at a high level, that's a highly valuable trade asset that they have there. And so they could easily trade him and get other assets in return for that, and then still utilize Josh McCown as their potential backup next year to Sam Darnold.
I think if Bridgewater's going to be a trade asset, he'll probably be it before they cut him, if they cut him at all. He may ball out in preseason, I'm not sure. But, again, Teddy Bridgewater was a playoff caliber quarterback. He can show in the past that he can lead a team, and sort of basically the NFL's kind of given up on him. And, I mean, he's on the Jets, for God's sakes. I mean, people have given up on this guy. So, I mean, yeah, for sure, just because of the injury. But, you know, a buddy of mine was talking to me the other day, and he asked me, who's a team in the NFL this year that a lot of people are overlooking that could actually be like a sleeper for the playoffs? And out of all 32 teams in the NFL, I think the Jets are actually a sleeper team this year and could actually be really good. So I know you're writing them off already. You're one of many. Like, I think that this team could win like 8 games this year. What are your thoughts? Do you really just don't have any hope in the Jets, huh?
No, and the main reason why is that they lost Muhammad Wilkerson, they lost Tony Ely, and they lost Demario Davis. And so their front seven on defense is, in my opinion, drastically worse. They still have good players there, and they did bring in Jermaine Johnson, who's a great corner, but I don't think that they had a good offseason to improve on their 5 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I mean, they still have Leonard Williams, Darren Lee, Jamal Adams is a superstar in my opinion, Jermaine Johnson. Like, I like pieces on their defense a lot, and their offense should be drastically improved with Terrell Pryor there and Crowell, and maybe Sam Darnold like takes the reins week 1, who knows. But I think people are overlooking the Jets, and it's funny, everybody, of course, coming into the year projected this team to win like 0 or 1 games, and they won 5. And like, there was a lot of talk that like Todd Bowles should have been coach of the year over Sean McVay because that they won 5 games. With some improved quarterback play, some more weapons on offense, I could see this team winning 7 or 8 games, honestly. So Vegas, of course, I assume is not going to be very high on them. So my Vegas guess is 6 wins, 6 and 10 year for the Jets. What do you think for them?
I went with 5.
5 wins. The actual Vegas over under is split the difference. 5.5 was Vegas's guess for the Jets. 5.5 wins for them. Yeah, I guess just for me personally, every year there's a team like the Rams who just blows everybody away. Nobody thought the Rams were going to be good last year, and so I think people are writing off the Jets. I just think that this team may not be a playoff team, but they could win 8, maybe even 9 games next year. You see it so much in the NFL of teams going from worst to first. So from what I saw from them last year, they were so competitive in games. They probably should have beaten the Patriots, actually, if not for that Austin Safarian Jenkins sort of like weird rule that I thought it was definitely a touchdown and they should have
Oh
won.
yeah.
So I think that this team has high aspirations for this year, but I don't know what they're like where they're going this year because they have 3 quarterbacks who can all capably handle the offense. I don't know where they're gonna go with it. So we'll see. It's gonna be an interesting team for sure, and hopefully they can get back to playoff contention from several years ago. All right, coming in at third in the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills. Bills Mafia. 9-7 year for them last year. They made the playoffs for the first time this century. They last made it in 1999, and like we talked on our podcast last time, the Bills were trying to tank last year. They were all but giving up on the season in the off season, and before the season actually started, they were trading away good talent for draft picks. They tried to tank last year, but Tyrod said no to that. So yeah, they made the playoffs for the first time since 1999. So good for them. Talking about their offseason, of course, the biggest news in the offseason was little quarterback swap. They let Tyrod Taylor go for the future in Buffalo. Josh Allen out of Wyoming is now their quarterback of the future. So they also added A.J. McCarron as well, and Nate Peterman's been taking some snaps in OTAs with the first team offense. Same question for them that the Jets had, like, who starts week 1 for this team? Because probably the scariest news for Bills fans is that I saw several reports come out on Twitter that right now the person who looks best in preseason is Nate Peterman, and he's been taking first team reps, so the guy who threw 5.5 picks is the best quarterback on their team right now, so that's good news. So yeah, who starts week 1? Because they signed McCarron to $12 million, so you'd think they'd try to get something out of that. Who do you think is going to be taking the first snap of the year for them?
It's going to be whoever wins out of A.J. McCarron and Nathan Peterman. And in Nathan Peterman's defense, he was thrown to the wolves against a really good Los Angeles Chargers team. So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but he was also a rookie at the time in LA. He was definitely not set up to win that game at all.
Yeah, and then they gave the reins. They awkwardly, slowly, quietly gave the reins back to Tyrod, and then made the playoffs. So, yeah, the great coaching by Sean McDermott there. But yeah, so looking at this team overall, I want to talk about Josh Allen for a bit because the Bills, of course, traded up, took him at 6 with Josh Rosen still on the board. Nobody, and hopefully you can explain this, Matt. Nobody has explained this to me. Nobody's given me a good, legitimate reason why this happened. Josh Allen played for the University of Wyoming, a terrible, terrible conference. Who the only team that anybody knows in their conference is Boise State. He had a 57% completion percentage in college, playing for a terrible conference against not great talent. Like, can somebody please explain me why he was a first-round pick? Like, what did teams see in him? Like, why did a person who had below 60% completion percentage get taken 6th overall? Can you explain it to me? Because nobody has yet.
Old school mentality.
So this mentality believes that you can train accuracy and you can utilize. They fall in love with the arm talent, and they believe that they can train accuracy, which has never been done. Like, you think about guys like Jamarcus Russell from LSU, first overall pick by the Raiders, was a complete and total bust. Dude had a crazy arm. He could take a knee and throw the ball 60, 70 yards down the field.
Yep.
But was inaccurate as all get out. I mean, granted, he played against better talent than Josh Allen did, which even further shows that this dude should have never even been considered in the first round at all. You are 100% right. His career completion percentages is just god-awful. And what's even worse about it, he wasn't even voted the best player in his conference as a quarterback.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness. This dude, if I was a Bills fan, I would be highly upset. But, I mean, everyone's falling in love with this arm talent, and they're going to start regretting that they let Tyrod walk by, like, week 8.
I mean, I don't even think, like, the Tyrod walk thing, like, they were rebuilding anyway. He's an old quarterback. Like, I don't even care about that, but, like, again...
Oh, no, yeah, you're right.
Josh Rosen sitting there on the board. You didn't even need to trade as many picks. They could have got him at 10. But
yeah.
Josh Allen, for me, I just don't get the hype. Like, I really just don't, man. He played in a terrible conference. 94% of NFL passes last year were below 20 yards. They talk about how he has a great arm and everything. The long ball is kind of dead in today's NFL. Like, you don't really see it that often unless they're trying to get, like, a pass interference call is a big reason why teams throw the ball deep. But, man, like, it's just a dink and dump kind of game in the NFL now. Like, deep ball means nothing virtually anymore. So saying he has a great arm doesn't do it for me in today's NFL. I just don't get it. I really don't understand why he was taken. Not only that, but again, they're nothing compared to Milwaukee Brewers pitcher Josh Hader, but there were some tweets from his when he was like 15 that got brought up, and they were pretty bad. But again, Josh Hader takes the cake. But, like, even then, like, just adding fuel to the fire of why I didn't think he was a first-round talent and just a quarterback who should be considered a franchise guy. I just don't get it. I never really got it. When they were talking him up before the bowl game and stuff, I watched his bowl game. It wasn't anything really to write home about. I just don't get the hype there. So I personally would have gone Rosen, and I think a lot of Bills fans are going to be regretting that pick in several years.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They'll be regretting it by, like, year 3.
Yeah, exactly. So, looking over their depth chart, the one thing that I do like about this team is their secondary is, like, a top 3 secondary in the NFL. You got Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, both Pro Bowlers last year. Tre'Davious White was excellent. He got some Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year votes. And then, of course, they brought in Vontae Davis, who, meh. But their secondary is fantastic. However, their D-line and linebacking core is questionable. But I think, again, this team, they tried to last year. They're rebuilding, and taking a quarterback with the 6th pick obviously confirms that. The one thing about this team is that I think A.J. McCarron is actually a good quarterback. Like, why not give him the reins? I was surprised they took a quarterback because I thought maybe they thought A.J. McCarron was the guy. I think he's actually a really good quarterback. What do you think?
He hasn't really shown above average production whenever he did have the opportunity to play at Cincinnati. And this team is drastically worse in the talent department
For sure.
than what he had at Cincinnati. So, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to see him succeed at all. It's better that he's out there rather than their rookie. I mean, they'll at least have time to develop Josh Allen, but I mean, we kind of covered that was, like, even if you develop him, he's not going to really be much anyway. But as far as what to expect out of A.J. McCarron, man, I think he's just kind of like their bridge quarterback until whenever Josh Allen's ready, and I think that he's going to win at most like 7 games a year.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I'm just higher on him than a lot of people, I suppose. But we'll see what happens next year in Buffalo. But overall, my Vegas guess, their defense is pretty good. Their quarterback play is going to be some of the worst in the league. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm going 6.5 wins. I don't know. They made the playoffs last year, and they didn't lose a whole lot of talent, I guess. But I'm going 6.5. That's just my Vegas guess. What about you, Mr. Daniels?
So I think that they are going to win 1 game this year, and that's against the Jets at home. And so,
come on, dude. No way.
The Buffalo Bills are going to be the new Cleveland Browns. Like, listen to this. They're losing their left tackle, their guard, and their center starting. Richie Incognito, Eric Wood, and Cordy Glenn. They're losing their starting quarterback who, like as we already talked about, took a team that tried to tank to the playoffs. They lost their leading tackler on defense in Preston Brown. They lost E.J. Gaines, who was a great corner, but they replaced him with Vontae Davis. And so now you bring in a quarterback that never really took over a team, or never really had a chance to take over a team that's going to be his first team that he's actually going to have full control over, but you don't have any talent with him. And then going back to the whole Josh Allen thing, there's a tweet that I want to point out by Pat Thorman. He tweeted that Josh Allen had the college completion percentage of 56%, and then Kelvin Benjamin has a career catch rate of 56%, and Zay Jones had a rookie catch rate of 42%. So this team all around is complete garbage. And then you have the whole shady thing going right now, and that is looking horrible. So at this rate, he might be suspended the whole season. So if he's gone, you now have Chris Ivory as your lead back. How are you going to get in the offensive yards? I mean, their defense is still pretty good. I hear you there. But how are you going to move the ball with this team?
That's a great point. And again, if you're saying Nathan Peterman is the front runner right now in the QB convo for week 1, like that's also, to be put lightly, not a great sign. So, okay, You're thinking 1 game personally, but what's your Vegas guess? Because they obviously don't think 1 game.
No. Everyone would be taking me over. I'm going to go with 4.5.
4.5. Very good guess there. So mine was 6.5. You and I are a little bit different, but the actual Vegas over/under is 6 wins. 6-10 year for Buffalo. Man, one win. I guess you made some great points. I mean, how are they going to move the ball? Because that team, rough. But they're going to be able to stop some guys. They had a pretty solid defense last year. I love their secondary, like I said. So, this is a no bet. I just don't. The thing about this division is they get to play the Jets twice and they get to play Miami twice. And I think Miami is going to be pretty bad. We'll talk about them next. But somebody has to win those games, or maybe the score could just be 0-0 and they just tie every game. But someone's got to win those games, right? So.
And to dive deeper into this, I would for sure take the under on Buffalo. The reason why is they play the AFC South and the NFC North. And if you try and think of who are the bad teams in the AFC South and NFC North, the only 2 teams that I could really think of are the Indianapolis Colts and the Chicago Bears. Other than that, you got the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee, Houston, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit. All of those teams, I think, even Indianapolis and Chicago, I think, are better than Buffalo. So you can count 8 losses there, and then you're going to lose New England twice, and then there's your 6 wins, and then I could see New York Jets and Miami winning at home. So then now you're down to 4. So It is not looking good for them at all. And they also play the Chargers. I mean, so this and the Baltimore Ravens as their last two teams that they play. To me, there's 0% chance that Buffalo wins more than 6 games.
You know what? You've persuaded me. I'm on board. I'm on board with you. Art of Persuasion, Matt Daniels. I completely agree. I think their schedule's too tough. Nathan Peterman's winning the quarterback comp. Like, I'm not gonna go one game, but they may win like 3 or 4 games and get the first overall pick next year. So that's you got me, man. That's a great point. So you're going under, obviously. Are we talking bet the bank account under Daniels? What do we think? That's what I feel like with the Bengals 7 wins is like I'll put my car. I'll bet my car and then I just get another one. Like that's how I feel about that. Are we? I could see it. Like they have a really tough schedule for sure.
Yeah, I mean I would definitely put everything I had on it. I would. There's no way that this Buffalo team wins more than 6 games.
For sure. All right, so let's talk about the Miami Dolphins next. Coming in at 2nd in the AFC East. Last year, a 6-10 year for Miami. Vegas's guess for them coming into the year was 7.5. It was a terrible start to the season last year. Of course, they made the playoffs the year prior with Matt Moore as quarterback, and they actually won a game in the playoffs too. So then Tannehill goes down with the ACL, and they bring in Jay Cutler. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter and just friends of mine talking about how awesome it was that Jay Cutler was going to be the quarterback of the Dolphins, how he was way better than Tannehill, how they actually have a good quarterback. Like, this could be a solid playoff team. And I was like, what are you talking about? Jay Cutler's never been... The words winning team and Jay Cutler have never been in the same sentence basically throughout his career. And, of course, I was right. And Tannehill not being there really, really hurt them last year. Of course, they won just six games. And, Matt, to me, this team is going downhill fast. Tannehill's in the last year of his deal. The talent around him, on offense at least, yikes. It's questionable for sure. But once Tannehill, I think the consensus is that he's had too many injuries. He wasn't that great of a quarterback for them. I think they're going to let him walk next year, and then they'll basically be in rebuild mode where the Bears are this year, and they'll probably draft a quarterback next year. So, what do you think is the outlook for this team this year? I mean, Tannehill is still there, and of course, I said on our last podcast, and you've persuaded me now, but I'll put him still. I'll put him still as a top 3 pick. That I think the Dolphins are just going to be really, really bad this year. But I wanted to hate him. I wanted to hate this team. But on paper, like, I love their defense, man. Robert Quinn, Cameron Wake, Rashad Jones, Kiko Alonso, Xavier Howard was excellent towards the end of the year for them. They added Minka Fitzpatrick. Yep.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's like a solid defense right there, man. Like, that's really, really... I really like that defense, so I can't hate on them that much. But the offense, yikes, man. I mean, you've got a running back competition between Frank Gore and Kenyon Drake, and then, of course, Tannehill coming off a major injury, and then their offensive line is really depleted. You've got a rookie tight end, and then Devontae Parker is the number 1 wideout on your team. So on offense, I think they're just really going to struggle to score points. What is your outlook on the Dolphins this year? Like, I think they wouldn't admit it, but, like, they're rebuilding right now. And, of course, next year they're really going to rebuild. But what do you think we're going to see from the Dolphins next year overall?
I think that they're going to make a run. I think that they're going to try and see, like, I'm going to think they're going to give Tannehill one last shot. And it kind of goes back to what I said about Buffalo and how they play really tough teams. Like, the divisions that they have to face are pretty rough. So if they go off to a bad start, I would imagine they would, like start tanking early, like
Yeah, for
get
sure.
rid of, like not try and win these games so they can get a higher pick. But I do, so I agree with what you said about the defense. On offense, though, they did add Daniel Kilgore to replace Mike Pouncey, and then they picked up Josh Sitton, which is also a pretty decent guard from the Bears. They brought in Amendola to replace Jarvis Landry, which is like nowhere near the same level, but he can play a similar role. And then, like you said, they got Mike Gesicki. So I think where this team goes is 100% reliant on Ryan Tannehill. And if Ryan Tannehill fails, then he's going to lose his job. And like you said, they're going to draft a quarterback. But, I mean, their defense is good with an improved offensive line and a good run game. This team could surprise people. Like how you said that there was there's a sleeper team that somebody overlooks. I think it might be Miami.
Wow, you and I are on opposite ends of the spectrum right now. My goodness, we could not be more off. You think Miami's a surprise team. They struggled last year so much, and of course they had Cutler as quarterback. I mean, they got shut out by the Saints, man. Before the Saints were even good. And so, I don't know, man. This team, on paper, like the defense, super fun defense, you gotta love that, but I don't know, man. Like, my outlook for this team is like if Tannehill were to get hurt, like they would just call it quits on the season and just draft a quarterback next year. And so the interesting thing before we take the guess here is like Sean McVay, of course, is the young coach that, of course, he's going to be in the league for the next 30 years, and everybody's super high on him. Their coach, Adam Gase, used to be like Sean McVay. Like, he's really young. He had a lot of success with the Bears, and then they made the playoffs, and I think it was his second season as coach. So a lot of people think like Adam Gase is a good coach, so that would sort of add to your point, but just the talent on offense is so bad. Like, Amendola is not going to replace Jarvis Landry. Kenny Stills had a drop problem. Like, I just don't know. Devontae Parker, I'm kind of high on him. But overall, I just don't like this team. I don't know what it is. I just think that they're going to lose 2 to the Patriots. They'll probably lose to the Jets. And, yeah, I don't know. I'm just not high on them at all. So
to talk about those specific points of why there's a difference in the offense this year, in my opinion, I think that they improved the offensive line by adding Josh, and so because of that, they will allow they'll have a better run game, and I think that I've made my love for King and Drake known on Twitter. He's going to have a great year, especially with how they were utilizing him towards the back half of the year last year. By bringing in Mike Gesicki, Adam Gase finally has a tight end target that he can rely on. Julius Thomas was nowhere near his prime, and he just was not successful at all. And so that's part of the reason why the offense failed. And so by an improved run game, a better red zone threat with the tight end, I think that this team has the potential to surprise people. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to go and win 9 games, like for sure, but like it's just something that I could definitely see. Like, I wouldn't be 100% surprised if that happened.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was a big fan of Gesicki out of Penn State. What was his 40 time? It was like
I think it was like 4.5. I have to look that up.
But it was the fastest any tight end has ever been clocked at, is if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So having a tight end being able to blow past linebackers, I love that. So I don't know. My overall, I'm a little higher on them than when we came into this podcast, I guess, from the points that you made, but I still think they're not going to be great. My Vegas guess.
4.54.
4.54.
40 time.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So my guess for them, for Vegas, is 6.5 wins. I think Vegas thinks they're going to be okay. Just not as good as we've seen in the last couple of years, I suppose. But what are you thinking?
I agree. 6.5. My personal prediction was 7 wins.
The actual Vegas over-under is 6.5 wins. You and I right on the button there. Yeah, I don't know what to really think of this team. It's gonna be an interesting team to see because so much has changed on offense. They have a new quarterback this year, and they lost a lot of offensive weapons. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're right. The offensive line has improved, but I just don't know, man. I just don't know. Also, interesting tidbit, they have a brand new 7th round pick kicker, which is never a good thing to start your year off with, like a brand new guy kicking in the NFL. It seems like the young kickers now have just been really struggling to make it in the NFL. Maybe it's just a trend, I don't know. Robert Aguayo and then Young Ho Koo from the Chargers is out of the league already, so we'll see. A brand new kicker that can't be good for their offense either. So wrapping up the pod and the last of the 32 teams that we've talked about here on this podcast, the Super Bowl losing New England Patriots. Last year for New England, 13-3 year. Of course, they lost in the Super Bowl in Minneapolis here to the Eagles and Nick Foles. Vegas's guess for them might have been the highest in Vegas history. 12.5 wins was what they thought the over-under would be, which I know doesn't sound like a lot because it's the Patriots, but 12.5 is a really, really, really high over-under. They're usually pretty conservative around 10.5 or 11 for the really good teams, but there were some people coming into the year who thought this team could go 16-0, but of course just 13-3 and then lost in the Super Bowl. So, of course, all the other teams that we've talked about on this podcast, we're basically talking about the year ahead, but not with this team, not with the Patriots this year. We know they're going to be pretty solid. We know they're probably going to win 10 to 12 games and most likely be the first seed in the AFC. But all the things that I want to talk about with the Patriots are about their future. And so my prediction for the Patriots this year is that this is Bill Belichick's last year as the coach of New England. I just had a feeling that maybe, I don't know, I just got this gut feeling that it's going to be this year, no matter what happens. I thought if they won the Super Bowl this year, he'd call it quits as a Super Bowl champion, but I think they're going to give it one more go this year, and then I think he's out. I don't know what that means for Tom Brady. I thought they'd just ride into the sunset together, but I think Brady still wants to play. What do you think? Do you think that this will be Bill's last year in New England?
I honestly hadn't considered it, but I mean that would definitely make sense, especially with the whole Josh McDaniels thing.
I mean, he's almost 70 years old, man. Like I think he just wants to retire for the last 10 years. He's had basically the best career any coach has ever had, and he knows that. He can hang it up. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think this is Bill's last year. And the other thing about this, and we talked about it with the Colts, that we were going to bring it up on this pod, is that this is my theory about what happened with the whole Josh McDaniels thing. My theory is that Robert Kraft and ownership and Josh McDaniels were all in on like him being the Colts coach, and it was all just like a fuck you scheme. Like I don't think he got cold feet. I thought they wanted to make him, Josh McDaniels, their coach, because they sort of were the main whistleblowers on the whole Deflategate thing, and that Josh McDaniels just spited them, threw them into oh my god, all the good coaches are taken. He backed out, like, we have to get Frank Reich, who nobody's really heard of. Like, I think the whole Josh McDaniels walking out on the Colts was a fluke. Like, it was just planned. It was set up. And that Bill's going to retire this year, and then Josh McDaniels will be promoted to the head coach of the Patriots. That's my conspiracy theory, Matt. Theory of the day. What do you think? Do you think that holds some water, that theory?
Yeah, that'd be a 30 for 30 one day.
Definitely. I legitimately believe Josh McDaniels never had any intention of being the coach of the Colts. He just wanted to spite him, and that he will be coaching the Patriots next year, that Robert Kraft promised him if he came back as offensive coordinator. that he'd be the coach next year when Bill retires. So that's just my thoughts. I don't know. But looking at this team for this year, though, I mean, it's just run it back time. Just another year of Brady and Belichick. They'll probably at least be playing in the AFC Championship game. The one, of course, reason that they struggled so much last year and in the Super Bowl was they had the worst DVOA in the AFC, and the only team who had a worse DVOA was the Buccaneers. So this defense could not stop anyone last year, and they allowed Nick Foles to throw for over 500 yards against them. So that's all you need to know there. They didn't really address that much on this side of the ball, so I don't know. Their defense is probably going to be pretty bad last year. Edelman suspended the first 4 games, but Bill will pick up Matt Daniels off the street and turn him into a perennial 100-catch receiver. So I don't know. It's just running back time for them. I don't have too many thoughts on the Patriots. So any final thoughts before we take the guess? I just wanted to get my conspiracy theories out there, but I think Bill Belichick will not be coaching the Patriots, and Josh McDaniels will take his place.
Yeah, my outlook on the Patriots in 2018, they will not have a first-round bye in the playoffs. I think they're going to be a 3 or 4 seed behind the Chargers and Jacksonville.
You know they play Miami twice, Bills twice, and the Jets twice, right?
Yes, that's 6 wins. But they also play Jacksonville, Tennessee, Houston, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit. And I think that they can beat a majority of those teams. I think that they're definitely going to struggle against some of them. Yeah, I mean, the main reason why I think that they're not going to be like the number 1 or 2 team is they lost Nate Soldier, they lost Deion Lewis, which they easily replaced with Sony Michel, by the way. They lost Brandon Cooks, which they did not replace, and they lost Malcolm Butler. And so I'm kind of struggling with how this team is going to be like a number 1, like for sure going to the Super Bowl team, because I mean that's just kind of like where they're at right now. Like they have to go for Super Bowl or nothing each year, and I just don't see that with this particular team. Like you mentioned about their defense struggling, I mean they didn't really do a whole lot to address that, and
Sure.
They're relying on a rookie to take over Nate Solder's spot. So I'm a little worried about that. But, I mean, the Patriots are going to be Patriots, and they're going to end up with, like you said, 10 or 12 wins. Yeah, I mean, there's just no question that they're going to be making the playoffs. I mean, they're going to win this division. It's just, I guess, the degree at how high they get.
Yeah, again, it's just run it back. Just run it back, man. They're going to be a playoff team. So, speaking of playoffs, before we end the podcast, we're going to go through our locks and locked outs here. So, locks, of course, who do you think? There's no chance they miss the playoffs. Locked out, what teams do you think are going to miss the playoffs for sure? So, I have 1 lock and 1 locked out. So, of course, on our last podcast in the NFC, I had 2 locks and then 4 locked outs. I honestly just do not know what we're going to see from a ton of AFC teams. There's just so much like turnover in these rosters, and there are a lot of like new rookie quarterbacks, and I just don't know what we're going to see. Like the Broncos could be good. Maybe John Gruden turns the Raiders around. Like, I just don't know what we're going to see. So my lock is the Patriots. That's literally my only lock. I'm not even locking in the Steelers, honestly. I honestly cannot lock in the Steelers. I just can't. So my other locked out team is the Bills. There's no way the Bills make the playoffs this year. So who are your locked out teams? We'll start there.
Yeah, locked out. I'm going with Buffalo for sure. As I've made it very apparent, I do not think very highly of them. I think Oakland can be a for sure locked out, and also the Jets. But really, anybody else, I could see a crazy run where, like, I could see Cleveland in it, I could see Cincinnati, and I can see Indianapolis. I could see Denver, Kansas City, Baltimore, and then the others are pretty much favorites to make the playoffs in some sort of fashion. So,
Yep.
I agree, man. I mean, AFC, I mean, there's like a few teams where there's just not a chance, but it's pretty open.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. There's just so many possibilities, and again, I think that we're going to see a lot of worst to first teams this year from the AFC, and I don't know. The Bills, there's no way they make the playoffs, but I really couldn't even lock out a team like the Jets, or I couldn't lock out a team like the Browns, or the Bengals, or the Colts. Like, I just couldn't lock them out. So, we're going to run through our 6 playoff teams. I'll go first. Well, we'll do it one by one for the divisions. So we'll just start AFC East. Patriots, obviously, you have them as well. All right, AFC North. I have the Steelers most likely winning that division. Are you with me on that?
The Steelers?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Then I think we're probably going to differ here, considering you said they were going to win 13 games this year, but I have the Texans winning the AFC South.
Yeah, I have Jacksonville.
Yep, you have Jacksonville. And then the AFC West, we both have the Chargers. So that leaves the last 2 wildcard spots. Who do you have as the last 2 teams to make the playoffs?
This was really hard. This is so hard to choose. For me, I had a really hard time choosing between Kansas City, Denver, Tennessee, and Houston. And so I ended up going with Kansas City and then Houston.
Okay, for sure. So you and I almost have 5 of the same 6 playoff teams. I gave my wildcard spots to Jacksonville, and then in kind of an upset, I think the Titans are going to sneak in again for the second straight year. I really just like that roster a lot, so I think the AFC South will have 3 playoff teams. Kansas City was just too... I don't know what we're going to see from Mahomes this year. I just don't... I have to watch it first. You can't just say on paper he's going to be great. That's why I left the Chiefs off, but if I were to not put the Titans in there, the Chiefs would be the next one up for sure.
Man, you talked me into it, man. You're right. I got to go with Tennessee. They got the experienced quarterback. They had a great offseason as far as defense goes. Yeah, yeah, you're right. I'm going to go with Houston as the 5 seed for me, and then Tennessee as the 6 seed.
The art of persuasion. You persuaded me. I persuaded you. It's a fair trade. So. Yeah, those are it looks like we have the exact 6 playoff teams, and then we're sort of iffy on the Chiefs. But before we end the podcast, we do have to wrap up the Patriots. My Vegas guess for them, just run it back, 11 wins is what I said. What do you think?
10.5.
10.5 wins. The actual Vegas over-under is 11 wins for the Patriots next year. So.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a relatively high over-under, but you're right, they have a tough schedule. Their defense was terrible last year, but Bill will figure it out, I suppose, and they'll just run it back. But that's all we got here, so thank you, Matt Daniels, for coming on. We will definitely have you on sometime in the near future for one of the weeks. I'm going to have a guest on every week for... Of course, the NFL season,